Now we're going to draw this top perspective. And this is really crazy perspective, and you won't use it that much, but it's a really cool effect. So let me show how to do this step by step. So first we have a new layer. Let's take a red color and take the ellipse tool. Hold shift to make it round. If you're working in Photoshop, stroke, let's go for 4. That's okay. And now we have this sphere. We duplicate it, so drag it to this icon, and then Control T, and then we can crop it a bit like this. And let's do it another one, so like this. And let's take these two and let's crop them more. So this way we're creating this this ball with all these lines. So cropping more and more until we have something we want to start rotating around to create the other side. So here, so now this seems like enough lines. Let's merge all these layers so we don't get too much layers. And oh, I duplicated it, but let's rotate it 45 degrees like this. Take that duplicated layer as well and rotate that 45 degrees the other side. So now we've created this net. And let's draw this. Take the line tool here. And we're drawing a line through here and here. Also, let's create some more lines and let's use a different color. So this vertical line. And let's make a cross. Merge those two layers, duplicate. And let's do this. So again, merge, duplicate, again, until you have something like this. So duplicate and merge and rotate. Now we're taking both these layers. I put them in a folder, put the opacity bit down so you can see through it. So now we can draw on top of it. So let's first draw the street. So everything that's on the ground. So let's draw a street. So something like this here. And then also here. So this already looks like the street. So in the things that are here are bigger because that's closer to our eyes. And this goes into the distance and it wraps around this ball. It goes around actually. So it's like you're drawing a planet here. Now we can start drawing in buildings. So here we're following still those red lines. But if we're going into the height, we're following these purple lines. And for these lines, we're following those red lines. Now the purple lines. And now we're following those red lines. And also the red. So here. So for example, if we draw this flat building, everything that's this is red, and everything that goes in the height is the purple lines. So that's what I'm trying to do. So here, like this, here, like this. So you can continue drawing these buildings. So let's do it a bit quick so it won't take too much time. So here, here. You can do it a bit freehand as well. It's, yeah, so something like this. Let's do it on this side as well. It's super fun to draw with this perspective. You can also do it on paper, of course, with all these lines, but it's just it's yeah, you have to take a bit more time for it to do. But it's also possible to do it on paper. I would actually advise it also to try it out on paper. So especially because it's harder, and that you will learn a lot from it. So here we can even, if we want, draw this building like this here, or maybe let's draw this building here. Then we need to, if those red lines should also follow, I think something like this. Yeah, seems to work like this here. I think you get this really cool effect. Yeah, like these buildings that are higher. So you can, if you want, you could draw this like it's this little planet or something. So yeah, and I could keep working on it. So let's draw this one here as well. So we have all these buildings. So yeah, that is how to use this kind of perspective. Let's continue with the next one. So this is something that's funny because we're looking with two eyes. And if you look at an object in the distance and you close you close your left eye or your right eye, and you look at an object in the distance, and now you close your other eye, you see a thing moving. Like if you're watching at a tree in the distance, if we're looking through our left eye, it looks like this, and if we're looking like our right eye, it looks like this. So a bit like, here, could color it like this. The other side would look like this. But in our brain, these two images, why doesn't it work? So here, these two images, also the red line one, will combine. So we're actually seeing this because these are combined. But when we close one eye, you see only the one. So that's why in perspective, sometimes you see it like this. So you're having these two perspective lines, and you could use that to create this, yeah, this funny perspective. It's not something you see a lot, but you could use it if you want to have something a bit weirder or something. So here we have this horizon line, and then we set one vanishing point here. And I'm just now doing it freehand. You can also do this with a ruler, of course. And there's also here this vanishing point is just a little bit different here. So here you can see that having two different colors can really make it a bit more easy. Let's first do this. So here I'm going to draw this side of street and following this action line. So here, or action line, this perspective point here, here, here. And here. So now I'm using this point. For this side of the street, I'm using this point. So you get this slight distorted perspective. You can see it more clearly in this example. So it's not something I do use a lot, but it's really worth using because it's weird, but it's actually how we often see in the real world. And that makes a difference between a picture and seeing something with our both eyes. So let's look at this one here. Here I'm showing how to determine the size of a character on perspective. So in this background, you see all these characters in this area. And how do you figure out how big that character needs to be? So actually, let's quickly draw this drawing. So if we have this perspective, let's see, and we have these houses here, so something like this. Then here we have this here, and then this here, and we have this thing going like this. And we can draw one character in here. So if we have this character, how big is a character that's here? You can basically do that with this character, draw the perspective lines of this character, and then you know this character is this big. So if we draw this on a separate layer and put it next, it looks way smaller than it is here. If we want to draw a character here, so on this ground plane here, you can figure it out by seeing where these lines go to. So then we know, so it should be, so maybe draw this character here to show it more clearly. So we have this line going here, but we're not matching this point. So now we're taking this point, looking where the perspective line coming from, drawing this line here, and where it intersects, you know that this character should be as big as this, more or less. And then we take this character and put it here, and then we know the size of this character. So I'm actually showing that here. So first we have this character here, and when we set up this horizon line and we draw the character here, we know this size and this size. So when we want to know the character here, we can draw this line here and here. So this is how you can figure out sizes of characters. And you can also determine the size of how big should the boat be here. So you can use that perspective. Then you know this boat should be big there, or if it's here, you should know it's big there, and etc. Yeah, you can try that out. Also, drawing a character in perspective. Often I'm using these boxes to draw a character in perspective. If it's high or low. So let's first draw this character here, using these basic shapes. And we'll also show why that's easier in a bit. So here. Then here we have the horizon line. If we draw the line from the top of the head to this here, and then also to the feet. So now we want to draw a character here. So it's no 3-point perspective, so the height of this character is the same here. But we're going in the height. So I usually use a box. So let's draw first a box through this character. So here's this perspective. Let's take a different color, or else it's really hard to follow. So let's draw a box surrounding this character. So here, here, here. And again, you can use a ruler. After a while, I like to draw these things freehand because it's just faster and you get an organic. But in the beginning, it's really good to practice with a ruler to get it into your hand. So sometimes I get this question about how to get a steady hand in drawing. And yeah, basically it's by practicing a lot. So now we have this box in height. So let's erase this box a bit that's here. So you can clearly see this box here. And let's draw this character in this box. So now we know we're looking a bit underneath it. So if we're drawing the feet here, you would see the bottom of the feet because they're on the bottom of this box. So that is basically how I draw these characters in perspective, to think in these boxes. And then you know you can draw this box in perspective, for example here for this head. So something like this. And then, you know, we have this ball. We're seeing a bit of the bottom of the ball here. So, and then we have his beak going around here and here. So we're seeing this bottom of the beak. So, and you can see it in these images. So here it's from the side. And we can look a bit of the top of the feet. But here we're looking at the bottom of the feet and the bottom of the chin. Here we're looking at the top of the head. So if we would draw this a box around this head, this box would look like this. So maybe this can be a bit difficult to understand, but that's why drawing boxes in perspective is so important, because actually if you can draw a box in perspective, then you know how to draw a ball in this box. And if you know how to draw the ball in this box, you can know how to draw this head in this box, because this head is almost a ball. So let's continue. More characters in perspective, maybe to make it a bit more easy to understand. So let's draw this character in perspective. First, fill this area with white. And let's draw this perspective line here. Draw a finishing point here and a finishing point here. So now draw these lines here for this side. Let's take, or let's make this a different color with Ctrl UE. So something like this here. And let's take a different, let's take blue for this side. So like this here. So now we have this. And let's take orange to draw on top of. So first I'm going to draw these boxes in perspective. So this is the head. This is the body. These are the legs. And here are the feet. So let's make this a bit opacity. And now we can drawing the organic shapes like I did there. So here drawing this ball here. We're looking a bit at the bottom here. Then we can guess these hands here. So these hands should be here, here, here. Then these legs should go like this here. These feet here. This body here. Then we have this head. Should be like this here. So you can do this to practice how to draw in perspective. Let's merge all these layers. Put the opacity a bit down. Take a black pencil and draw this character. So we're looking at this nose, this mouth, so here. And maybe if you still find this hard to do, maybe take a toy and draw this toy from some angles. Or maybe take something more easy like a Rubik's Cube or any other object and watch it from different angles and see how you can learn drawing from that. So here, here. So now we have made this character. So how to figure out shadow on an object in perspective? So this can be a bit, this is quite a challenge to actually learn. And I always need reference to do this, but let's follow these steps. So first draw a cube. So I'm going to draw this cube in perspective a bit freehand because of the time. So something like this. This seems like it's in perspective. So always draw through your shapes to check it if it's correct. So yeah, fine. Let's erase a bit of these lines here. It's a bit less crazy. So now we're drawing a line. So I'm taking the line tool, a line through these points. So here, let's set this line here so that it continues. So something like this. So now we have this line, and let's draw this point here. Then here. So this is a light bulb, and light emits out of this source. So if we're following this point, where the light's coming from, and this intersects with this point, and it goes through until it intersects this point of the line. So now we know this point. If we draw a line from this point to here, and we do this here, and we go from this point, it intersects with this point, and crosses here, then we know this point here. And if you take this point, going through here, and now we're going through this point here, then we know it intersects here. So now we can paint in the shadow on the ground. So let's make this a bit lighter. So here we have our box in perspective on the ground. Now we can draw in the edge of the shadow. Now let's color it with the shadow here, here. So now we have the shadow here. Let's make this side of the box a bit darker. So something like that. So now we have light in this box. So let's draw one more. And let's draw this object. So here, this here. So something like this. So we have this object. And now we're going to follow this line here. And here's the horizon line somewhere. The horizon line is not that important here. And we draw the light bulb. Let's draw the light bulb here. So we know that the light, let's make it a bit smaller. So the light's coming from this point through there. This line is going through here. So you can see I messed up the perspective a little bit. We can still draw these lines going past these corners. So here we can this is going here. So that we also know. Oh, wait. I did a mistake there. So now we know that this goes here. And then we know that this line goes here. So it should be something like this. This should go here. Yeah. So something like this. So we can make this lighter. Draw this thing. Draw this here. And let's fill this with some shadow. And also fill this here. And I would advise you to really use a ruler and make this correctly. And just want to show a bit of the steps I'm taking to draw this. So yeah, this is how that would look. And yeah, maybe you can try drawing the other shapes as well. So here you can see that it also works with a cylinder. You just take these points, like the corners, but you, yeah, and then you imagine draw these lines following this shape. So yeah, that's how to draw shadow on an object. And that here I'm showing how I do it on this prop. Maybe you can try following these steps if you find it hard to do with your own drawings, but then you can use this, try to copy this image and follow the steps I'm taking to draw this. And that's actually one of the best ways to learn, to copy and figure out how to follow these steps. So let's show how I draw a street. So you have here one more. So I basically showed this also earlier, but I usually start with a perspective grid. And here's the perspective point 1. So then you can draw this lines going from this point. So here. And you have to figure out for yourself how neatly do you want to do it when you make a drawing. But when you're first starting with drawing, I would really take your time to do these things and try to do it just as neatly or even more precise than I'm doing here. And when you learn that, then you can do as rough as I'm showing here. So let's draw the other perspective point. And the more you do it, the quicker you will get at this. So here, let's draw this second point here. Then here, following these lines. Up here, merge them. Deleting this side because we don't need it, because we only want to draw in this canvas. You can put the opacity bit down. At first, I'm going to draw the big shapes. Like here, it's the sidewalk. Here's the building, following these lines. Then sometimes I already draw a character in to have a size reference. And then, like I showed earlier, you can figure out how big a character should be here. So then you know how big the sidewalk should be here. And then you can also guess how big a car should be here. Then we can draw this building here. This is how I would draw a street, basically. Yeah, maybe if you want, you can try to copy this drawing and following these steps. And it's basically it's just a lot of work, but following these steps makes it really more easily to do. So each side, it's a bit different, but I think I have a better drawing to show that for this video. Let's show the street. So these are also some examples. Maybe you can use this reference to to make these drawings yourself, to copy them, and maybe make your own versions of it. So drawing organic shapes. And drawing organic is, yeah, it's the same as what you would do with characters. But let me just show it. So let's make this a little bit smaller. And let's draw this perspective line here. Maybe I first want to make a really rough sketch. So sometimes I do this. I first make a rough sketch so I can figure out the perspective points. So here, having this tree and using this line tool, and then drawing these lines here that I think will help me to create this tree. So then here, so these are really perspective guides because they will help you draw the tree, but you don't need to take them literally because it's really hard to put the tree in a box. So now we have this. Now we can start drawing in these boxes. So here, 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 here. Let's draw in this for this here. So using these objects can help you draw this in perspective. And you need to practice this a bit more before you, but this at one moment it will just click how to draw these shapes. But these basic shapes, these construction shapes, also makes it really, it's a step easier. And now you can start drawing in those boxes the organic shapes. And be really organic and try to have these smooth lines. So like this. And then you can start adding details, drawing in the bottom of the tree. Maybe change those shapes a bit. And that's basically how I draw a tree like this in perspective. Yeah, I would try to follow these steps and try it out yourself as well. So here you can see that I used these organic shapes. Here I drew these organic shapes in this perspective. And so I started out with drawing these boxes, and then yeah, maybe it's useful to show it a little bit how I would draw something like this. So again, starting with this canvas, because you want to know the area you want to draw in, I would really advise to do that. So draw the horizon line and think about that one. So then I actually didn't draw the perspective guides because I just here sketching really roughly. So here we have this water. It's going like this. So sometimes you're going a bit more freehand with it, especially when you're drawing more cartoony, but you have that perspective in mind. And that's why it's really important to practice those earlier things I showed. But here you can see I'm using all these shapes, and I mean really, but when I'm drawing this building here, I'm going to think about, okay, how's this perspective works here? It's going like this here. And then I draw a tree, and I do that way more freehand and etc. So you can draw these shapes on top of it to give it this sense of depth and 3D-ish. Yes. So I would advise you to actually practice this type of drawing, but this can be a bit harder, but the more you train perspective, the more this will go automatically. You don't have to think that much more about it. Yeah, the same I did here. And try copying these drawings and draw this perspective grid on top of it. So perspective grid is when we have a ball, we don't see the perspective on it, but when we're adding these lines, this ball gets depth. So here, and that's called a perspective grid or a perspective guide. Drawing a room, it's basically the same as drawing the street. But yeah, it's more, yeah, the walls are really important. So here we have this, and then we can draw here this line here. And now I'm going to use this perspective brush. So here, and it's basically all these lines coming together. But if you make it a brush from, you can simply use it to quickly draw these things. So here, let's take a regular brush. So here, let's put the opacity down from this, and let's take a purple color. Let's draw in those walls. So we know this side of the wall should be something like this. So we can draw in the first wall. And then we know that the second wall, we can draw that more reddish. We can follow these lines, these points. So now I've drawn this room. You can see, oh, here, this room was a bit different. So don't like this perspective much. So I want to have this room. I want more space for this room. Maybe you can first draw the floor to figure that out. Yeah, I want something like this here. So now we have this floor, then we know where this window of this door is. You draw in the window, this chimney here. And when I've drawn these objects, you can draw in the couch. And just keep adding more of these objects here. So first I'm drawing in the walls, then I'm drawing in the door. You can also add the character like I did here, so you know the size of everything, so you can figure out the size of the couch and so on. So again, if you find it difficult to do with your own versions, try following these steps, starting with the perspective grid, drawing in the walls, adding the props, adding details and values. And if you have problem with the size of the, try drawing a character inside your object and use that as reference to see how big everything should be. So that's how to figure out drawing a room. Again, this is a bit different. So here actually, normally you would use this canvas. So something like this here. But here I didn't do that. But this is something that you maybe would use if you were making the whole room for maybe a 3D modeler could use some reference like this to work from. So again, you can follow these steps to practice. And if you find it really difficult, try follow these steps. And if you find it still too difficult, try watching the earlier videos, because that's basically everything you need to be able to draw things like this. And sometimes like this thing here, like this spaceship, I drew freehand here. And at one point you will be able to more or less guess it. And especially with this cartoon style, you don't have to be that precise to draw it believable. Yeah, here's an example of drawing this train station in perspective. So again, the big shapes first, then here you can see I just started with straight shapes. And then I added all these arcs on top of it. And to be honest, I just guessed these arcs a bit like this here. So I'm not figuring out everything perfectly because that will just take too much time. And if you're working somewhere and you don't have that much time to figure out everything, but also it helps to really study how to draw all these things precisely, because when you know that, then it will be more easier to draw these kind of things freehand. Drawing this room, that was earlier the same as that. Yeah, it's basically the same as I did here. So again, if you find it hard, try to copy these step-by-step drawings, and this will help you to draw your own drawings. But when you first study this and then do your own drawings. So harbor. I can talk a little bit about this. This lesson is not about composition, but oftentimes I start with scribbles like this, and it doesn't have to look pretty because you throw it away anyway after that. You just use it to figure out what you want to draw quickly. Then you work it out a bit, even more, and then even more. And I don't draw all the perspective guides, but first I do this rough drawing. And of course, I know I've drawn a lot of perspective, so I can guess it a bit. But then I start adding perspective and I make everything correct. And then I going to apply all these details and make sure everything is correct as possible. So drawing a car in perspective, yeah, maybe it's fun to show this step by step. So here again, we have this perspective line. Maybe first you draw a rough box to figure out the perspective you want to use for this car. So sometimes you just start with really roughly sketching this box in, then starting to draw in the right perspective. So it should be here. Following this line here, it intersects here. Oh, even more here. Then drawing all these other lines. Oh. And let's add these lines here as well. So let's add another line here. And now I can start drawing in these shapes and break down this car. And maybe you're making a small thumbnail in your sketchbook first about what kind of design you want to make, because you want to have this. You don't want to think too much about design in this stage. You're not just trying to figure out how to draw this in perspective. So something like this. And then the wheels are here. Follow this perspective here. And here. And you can figure out everything as far as you want to take it here. The shadow going here. And here you can see I started with the big shapes, adding the smaller shapes here and there, even more smaller shapes, making the sketch on top of it, and then adding shadow. That's basically it. Before this, in my sketchbook, I do it freehand to figure out how I want to let it look. But here I figuring out everything correctly and to draw into perspective. Yeah, the same with drawing this bike as the car. So drawing this box and basically draw this scooter inside this box. Also for this bike. And you don't have to draw all these finishing points always. If you're a bit better with it, you can start drawing it like this. And this is especially useful in your sketchbook, so that you can guess this a bit. But before you do this, I would really advise you to learn it the correct way, so you get a feeling for that. But learning to draw, unfortunately and luckily, it takes a lot of time and effort to learn. It's not easy, but the more you do it, the better you will get at it. But again, you can also take these drawings and study them step by step, and you're learning a lot from copying. Only try to think about why did the artist you're copying from made those decisions, and try to learn from that.